Direct from Montreal, Canada, this is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon, a special midweek edition. I had a few extra moments on my hands, so I figured, okay, let's just throw out a special episode. And this one is with one of my favorite singers, a guy named Tuk Smith. He was with a band called The Biters, and their albums, if you can go find them on Spotify and stuff, just absolutely fantastic rock and roll. Just brilliant, 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 brilliant rock and roll. However, in this day and age, it's hard to keep a band going, so they disbanded, and Tuk is now solo, and he's got a band called Tuk Smith and the Restless Hearts, or he's part of a formation called Tuk Smith and the Restless Hearts, and they will be on tour all summer, playing stadiums. And I know what you're thinking. What do you mean they're playing stadiums? They will be the fifth band on the Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison, etc., tour. And their new album coming out shortly is called Looking For Love, Ready For War. So I sat down for 20 minutes with Tuk Smith. In fact, I sat down 3 times with Tuk Smith because the day he called, his cell phone coverage, because they were on tour, was just abysmal. And the line dropped a couple of times, so we had to make 3 separate calls to get this conversation done in full. But through the magic of editing, we will stitch it all together and make it sound terrific. So here, without further ado, is the one, the only, Tuk Smith. We are speaking with singer Tuk Smith of course, Tuk Smith and the Restless Hearts. The band will be opening up for the Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison Stadium tour, as we say in Montreal. Tuk, bonjour. How are you?
Bonjour. Yeah, hey, thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, listen, I have been a fan of yours going back to the days when you were with the Biters. I really thought the Biters were going to be the next big thing. The songs were there, the energy was there, the vibe was there, the live performances were there. But now we've got Tuk Smith and the Restless Hearts, and I am thrilled. So talk to me about that transition and not being Tuk Smith of the Restless Hearts, but being Tuk Smith and the Restless Hearts, putting your face and your name and your brand on the front, and what does that mean for fans?
Well, it was definitely not an ego thing to be a solo artist. I was kind of forced into it, for better or worse. There was many reasons why Biters had to disband, and in the Biters, I was writing the songs. It was pretty much the same as it is now of my solo band, but we started Biters together, and my vision for that project when it started was to be a band like the Ramones or the Clash. So this transition was a little different. I had some kind of weird feelings about people are going to think I'm an egomaniac or anything. It wasn't like that. I kind of had to do it to keep playing music, and here I am. I don't know how it happened, but it did.
It did. So talk to me about, you do have a new album coming out, which will be out, I guess, in the summer. Talk to me about musically. Is it a great departure for fans that don't know you and want to check out Looking for Love and Ready for War? Is it just straight up rock and roll? Are we doing disco? The fan that doesn't know you, and that's why we're here to try to introduce you to those fans.
Right.
What can they expect?
Do you have a free copy of the album?
I do not have a pre-copy of the album.
Okay.
I have heard the single, of course, What Kind of Love.
Okay.
And I love it. But listen, I'm biased. I'm sold. I bought everything the Biters. I bought everything the Biters ever did. I tracked down all the B-sides and their unusual singles and the Japanese. I bought it all. And I bought it. I didn't get any freebies. I love buying stuff because you have to support your artist. That is a message that we must repeat repeatedly.
Yes.
But no, so what can fans expect? They don't know you. They go to Poison and they're expecting Cat Dragged In, and they're expecting Wild Side, and they're expecting Pour Some Sugar on Me, and they go, ugh, why do I bother go seeing this guy? So what are they going to get?
That's a complex question. Well, I think that in Biters, when we started, there was kind of more of a punk influence, but I've always been a power pop guy. It's always been my core thing. Especially 70s power pop. But I think on my solo record, I wrote the songs in Biters, so it's not going to sound like a completely different person. The difference is on Biters, I was making the records with my friend Dan Dixon and involved in producing it and hands-on. So I had a different producer on this record, so it's going to give me a different sound. And what I will say is it sounds massive. So my goal was to really, instead of in my previous band, champion bands like T-Rex and Slade and Sweet and things like that, this time there's more of an American sound. And there's more Cheap Trick. There's more Tom Petty. There's more Springsteen. There's more elements like that. There's some Americana tunes. There's some Motown tunes, some hard rocker. So it's a big scope of the styles of music, just a lot of love. Really guitar driven, lots of harmonies, lots of big hooks. And my intent was to make a big rock and roll record that mattered. And I think I accomplished it.
Yeah, and of course, listen, you've got Rob Cavallo, who's worked with Green Day, Eric Clapton, Fleetwood Mac, and others. But for you, doing this project, is this just the next logical step in the career, or does this feel like you're starting over and you're like, okay, here we go, step one? How do you sort of see this, right? Is it starting over, or is it the next logical step?
I don't think it's either, because I had already built kind of a cult, small but very loyal and awesome cult following with Biters, and most of those people have carried on over with me to this thing, and I'm very grateful. But it does feel like the next logical step, because in some ways, because I always write songs in solitude, and I spent a lot of time alone writing this album, and that's kind of how the last couple Biters records were too. So the creative process was the same, but it felt like starting over, because I had to fight and kick my way to get a deal, to get the record made. I had to put a whole new band over. So that all felt like starting over from square one. What doesn't is the first major tours I'm doing are with Motley Crue and Def Leppard. I mean, that's not starting over. That's great. But I feel like I have more than paid my dues, and it feels deserving. But I'm also very humbled and grateful at the same time. So it's a weird balance of everything.
It really is. So what are some of the... and you're also doing that tour with Airborne. Not the entire tour, but a few select dates. And, of course, the one in Montreal is not one of the select dates, God forbid.
I'm sorry about that. I was bummed.
I was hoping you'd apologize. No, I'm kidding. But what are some of the challenges for a new artist in this day and age? I mean, it's easy for Mötley Crüe to throw up their name and get a stadium full of people. It's easy for Kiss to go out there and put up their name and get an arena full of people. What do you have to do to get to that level? We talk a lot about social media, but does it come out just to getting out there and being on an Airborne tour and being on is it just live shows? Is it being savvy on the social media? What do you need to do?
Well, this is a really, really complex question, because it feels like a free-for-all right now, with kind of like the rock and roll industry, if you're a band. And without sounding too jaded or being nasty, a lot of the industry is ran by bands and people that have a lot of money, or they have a parent or somebody that's connected to the industry. And I guess it's always been like that when I talk to people. So there's a lot of buy-on bands. If you can afford to get a producer, they'll do it. So right there, one guy went to manage me a long time ago, and the first questions he asked was, is anybody in the band rich? Because that's the best way to get there. I imagine that's always been the case. Second is, even to get tours like Airborne, it's so bureaucratic, and there's so much red tape. It's so hard to get a tour. It's so elite and cliquey that you've just got to keep beating the fuck out of the door until you make your own break. And with Biters, I was super aggressive. We were an unsigned band forever, and we were doing tours with like Danko Jones and Ace Frehley, Social Distortion, nice mid-level tours, just recording our own records and kind of doing it and just going out there and making your own way. So I feel like there is kind of like a DIY approach you have to take and really kind of just push it without looking back until you kind of chisel something out for yourself. And then the social media thing is a whole nother animal, because they want you. That's just part of the game nowadays. And sometimes I think, like, if Kurt Cobain or Bon Scott or some of these big rock guys, how would they act if they had to be actively taking part in social media? it would be really weird. I imagine like Mark Bolan would be taking selfies all day, but you think Bon Scott or Kurt Cobain would be taking selfies and being on there? It's a weird dynamic shift to think about, and it's just something you have to do now.
You're right. You're really right. It is kind of strange. Could you imagine, especially a band like Kiss in the early days? Imagine if Twitter had been around in 1975. Are they going to spend their days posting pictures of them eating breakfast at Denny's in their full makeup? Or
I know. I know.
It would have been kind of crazy. Now, we have, of course, mentioned the Biters a couple of times. You do have a great discography with them. Do you, play those songs, update them, make them your own? Do you just ignore it and say, no, I'm starting over and we're going to play and push the new music? What do you do with the catalog?
I feel like Biters is I'm not trying to forget the Biters and people are going to be, but this is a completely separate thing that has nothing to do with Biters at all. The only thing that has to do with Biters is there was a song I named my new band afterwards. Because it wasn't copyrighted, because every band name is taken forever. And that's about all. And I love that. And I kind of want to preserve its legacy, for better or worse, separately. So it's all new stuff now.
So what kind of set list are we looking at? What are the time allotments they've given you on this tour? I'm imagining as the fifth act on a 5-act bill, we're looking at 25 minutes, 30 minutes?
Well, yeah, 20 to 25, depending on the show. And Biters did a Kerrang tour a couple years ago, opening for Sum 41, and we were like first to four, and we literally were getting 18 minutes. And it's not even enough to get started. But I think as the tour goes along, they're going to see how it's moving, and they're probably going to be able to bump our set up a little bit. But that being said, I'm going to try to put on the best 25-minute show I can possible for folks, and just rapid fire as much as I can out. So
yeah, keep the hey people, welcome to whatever down to a minimum, and just get to the songs. But
no Paul Stanley banter in between songs. I don't have time.
You're not going to separate the audience into two sides and make them cheer for you?
No, I'm not going to do the Freddie Mercury thing everybody's doing now, where they go, no. I don't have time to do
it. Which is disappointing. Now, while you're on the tour, I know, of course, that they have radius clauses and you can't go, but do you see yourself taking the show to a club, outside of the radius and playing some extra nights, or doing like 2 gigs in a day or off nights? Or are you really just going to focus on the Motley Crue and Def Leppard tour, and that is it, and you don't want to burn yourself out?
No. I'm going to try to play as much as possible. I mean, if there's a way where we can get a little bit of scratch to make it worth it, and I can connect with people in a small club, I'm definitely going to do that. That's why I'm out there. You're already out there. I want to play, man. So we're definitely working on that. We're trying to see what we can and can't do with Live Nation. And as long as we're allowed to do it, I'm going to try to play as much as possible.
That is perfect. I remember years ago having seen one of these Poison tours with Faster Pussycat on it, and they literally played in Mansfield, Massachusetts. And about an hour and a half after their set, they were playing in Rhode Island, and I went for both. I thought it was fantastic. Hey,
that's cool. Yeah.
The more you play, the better it is. You did say, of course, it's going to be a big rock record. You're going to hark back to some of that 70s sound and all. How difficult do you think will that be to get to radio, to get to, the Sirius XMs of this world? Is the sound not meant for modern radio, or are you going to try to, turn it around and get some classic rock stations? Is rock music, I don't want to say is rock music dead, because it's not. That's a silly thing to say, but is it more difficult to sell a rock album these days?
I don't know, because I'm so close to it. I'm obsessed with rock and roll, but I will say this. What people are calling alternative and new rock, a lot of it doesn't even have guitars or any elements of what you would call rock. But, things like Imagine Dragons are considered rock. So I think the definition has changed. But I think with my producer and me, when we were making our record, he said he knows there's an audience for this kind of American rock and roll. And he says, but they don't know it yet. And he says the goal was to make it sound so fucking good that they just want to listen to it. So my record, while it harkens back and my influences are very from all the cornerstones of classic rock and roll, it sounds competes with anything fidelity-wise. It fucking smashes. So I think that's going to be exciting. But I also think that you're seeing some new upcoming bands, and I think that all these rock movies has really got a younger audience into rock and roll. And I think that's really good. And hopefully the tides are turning back the other way.
I think they are. And of course, Looking for Love, Ready for War out this summer. And I will finish on this. You are, of course, doing this tour with Def Leppard and Motley Crue and Poison and Joan Jett. Are you a fan of those bands? And what have they meant to you? Regardless if you're a fan of music or not, they certainly led the way in terms of marketing, in terms of concept, in terms of presentation. Give me a little quote about sort of the main three: Def Leppard, Motley Crue, and Poison. Let's start off with Motley Crue.
Well, I mean, growing up, I was a huge Motley Crue fan, and you've got to understand that some of my rock and roll heroes were Keith Richards and Johnny Thunder.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Oh, cell phone service. Let's get right back to Tuk Smith. We are going to welcome back Tuk Smith. We were in the middle of an answer, and of course, computer gremlins moved us along. But we were talking about your impressions of Motley Crue, Def Leppard, and Poison. Now, of course, you were saying you were a big fan of Motley Crue. So let's pick that up with your affinity for that band.
Well, yeah, I read the dirt when I was first getting into drugs real heavy and partying. So Mickey Six was kind of a big influence, but you know, his idol rock and roll heroes were like Keith Richards and Johnny Thunders and Mark Bolan, and those are three of my favorites too. So, and you know, he loved bands like Sweet and Cheap Trick, and those are all like, you're naming like my favorite things. So I think we'll have a lot in common with that.
Yeah, that'll be great. And of course, you've got Def Leppard on there. Now that's maybe not as, you know, image-wise, it's not as dirty rock and roll, but you can't deny Photograph and Foolin' and Pour Some Sugar on Me. I mean, it's great arena rock done at that other level, right?
Yeah, as far as songwriting goes and production, like me, at this point in my career, I only really care about songwriting. That's my number one priority. So those are really well-crafted songs. Pop hooks, huge. And when we were doing this record, Cavallo would go, yeah, this one's like Def Leppard. And he would say that, and I'd go, what do you mean this doesn't sound like Def Leppard? He goes, what I mean is you're just giving me the fucking hook. You're just giving it to me. So, yeah, that's where it's at.
That's where it's at. When do I get to hear this record? I need to hear this record. I can't wait. I can't wait.
You've got to email the woman from my label that hooked us up, and she'll probably send you advance copy.
Oh, there you go.
That's what you should do.
Recently, Doc McGee was talking about how Kiss on their End of the Road tour might actually only be the end of the road for Gene and Paul, leaving the door open to maybe it's not the end of the band, and maybe there will be sort of like a Rockstar In Excess Kiss version show coming down the road. I know you've been a big Kiss fan. The Biters have done shows in Kiss makeup. Would you be interested to give it a shot and maybe be in Kiss version 2.0?
If you want me to be honest, I already got the Paul Stanley official boots, and I already know how to do the makeup, and I already know a lot of the early catalog. I think I could crush it.
Yeah.
I'd love to prank, though. I have to grow a little more chest hair, though.
A little more, yeah. Well, or you can just glue it on, cosmetic, a wig, a chest wig. Why not?
Yeah, I could probably figure that out. Maybe shave some of my dog's hair off, put it on there. You know how it goes.
Yeah, I know how it goes. Anyway, there we go. Tuk Smith. Yeah, it would be fine. Tuk Smith and the Restless Hearts debut album, Looking for Love, Ready for War, out this summer. And, of course, the band on tour. A few dates with Airborne, and then, of course, off to the big stadium tour. And spending your summer on a stadium tour cannot suck. I got to tell you that.
No, it's going to be awesome, man. I can't wait. I got to get me one of those, like, little hoverboards to ride around backstage in, though.
Anyway, there you go, Tuck. Thank you so much.
That was a joke, though. I'm not going to get a hoverboard, man. Come on.
Well, listen, Tommy Lee runs around in a hoverboard, and when they did the end tour with Alice Cooper, if you remember, he missed like 2 weeks or a month because he literally fell off the hoverboard backstage and busted up his wrist. So, might be dangerous for you to do.
Well, that's because he was running butt naked, and I heard he's got a bunch of piercings on his privates, and it was knocking his balance off. That's what I heard.
Probably true, actually.
I
Anyway,
made that up. Sorry.
It's okay. We'll just throw that on the internet. And let folks run with it. Why not? Add to
Don't
the.
do that. Don't. Please don't do that.
All right, I won't. Yeah, let's not get you kicked off the tour before it starts.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and of course you'll be playing all the great stadiums. It's going to be great to play like a place like Fenway Park. I'm a little jealous of that, but as we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you.
As we say in Georgia, you're goddamn right.
Cheers, sir. Merci. Have a good day.
Thank you, buddy. Good talking to you. Bye.
You too.
Here's Paul Stanley to tell you why he doesn't want to shake your hand.
Some people might have a little rock and roll pneumonia.
Ugh, not even cold gin will kill those germs. This is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.